Hello everybody, this week's episode comes to us from Seatstory Cup 8. It's a match between Senfglas and Alliestraza, and it was brought to my attention by LeonSN, or @SN_Leon on Twitter. We're going to be looking at Alliestraza's turn. She has just hit Fatigue, and the last card in her deck was Ultimate Infestation. I'm really excited to break down this particular play because we're in a Fatigue scenario. It's kind of like a closed loop, right? We don't have to worry about cards that we're going to be drawing in the future, and we get to formulate a very narrow and specific game plan that is based entirely on the resources that we have on the board and in our hand, and of course in the upgraded hero power from Malfurion. Since all the variables on our side of the table are, well, on our side of the table, and we're not going to have to worry about any more unknowns for the rest of the game, the only unknowns that remain in this equation are on Senfglas' side of the table, or more particularly in what cards he's going to be drawing off the top of his deck. We have seen Senfglas play 19 cards, and we don't know his deck list just yet, but it's probably fair to assume that the cards we have not seen multiple copies of so far have friends lurking within the deck somewhere. It'd be really surprising if he didn't run 2 Meteors, 2 Firelands Portals, 2 Flame Strikes, etc. It's also probably fair to assume that the new marquee big Spells Mage card, Dragon Caller Alana, is lurking within there somewhere, and perhaps also a Medivh the Guardian. So even though Allie doesn't know the exact cards that remain in Senfglas' deck, she can have a pretty good idea of what's remaining in there and use that to inform her decision as to what she should or shouldn't be doing this turn. Now the question becomes, what will you do with this information? Here comes the rope.
Quickly. I wonder.
We can see that Allie opts to go for the line that I think most players would go for in this position. She plays a Spreading Plague, she uses her hero power to attack 3 to the face, pushes all the damage she can, and uses Dream to return one of those water elementals to hand. Those, of course, will be dealing 3 damage, freezing something, and gaining 3 health. They're extremely tough to deal with in racing scenarios like this one, and I think no matter what we're doing, we're always going to be dreaming one of those water elementals. So here's the long and the short of the situation for Alliestraza. It's pretty simple, actually. What you see on the board, what you see in your hand, that's what you get. So if Senfglas is ever able to clear away this board, Allie just loses. There's no way she's going to be able to keep up with the freeze, the damage, the life gain. So she has to find a way to try to set up lethal as quickly as possible. She has no ability to try to play for the board. She's just going to get buried if she tries to play that game. She has to be pushing all the damage to face, which is what she does. What she wants to be doing ideally is setting up lethal as quickly as she can in a way that minimizes the number of potential live draws for Senfglas. Since our goal is to set up lethal, there's really only 2 plays she can make. There's play A, which is exactly the one she did. Play that Spreading Plague, use the hero power, push it to face, push all the damage you can to face, and dream that water elemental. Or option B, which is to use Ultimate Infestation on the face, push all the damage at face, and dream the water elemental. Now, it might seem kind of counterintuitive to try to use an Ultimate Infestation when there's 0 cards remaining in your deck, but if we look at how much damage we're going to be taking off of that Fatigue, it's not going to factor at all into the bottom line as to who is winning or not winning this game. Basically, what's going to happen is either Allie is going to win the game on her following turn, or she's just going to die. Senfglas is going to find a way to clear off her board, and then she's never going to be able to keep up with the water elementals. We do have to still add it up in our heads to make sure we're not like putting ourselves in lethal range. That could be a potential way that that play is worse than an alternative. But when you see 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6, and then take a look at the fact that we have a cool 47 life right now, the fatigue damage is just not going to factor into this equation. So we've narrowed it down to play A, which is the play Allie made, and play B, which is the Ultimate Infestation line. Both of these lines actually set up lethal on the following turn. So the only thing that we have to control for is whether or not either of these lines is capable of beating a card that the other line is not. In the interest of saving on time, I'm just going to shortcut here a little bit. Line A is going to put our opponent down to -1. That's when you factor in the attack from the water elemental and the Ultimate Infestation to the face on the second turn. And line B is going to put our opponent down to -2 when you factor those things in just the same. So to determine which line is better, all we have to do is just run down the list of cards out of Senfglas that he could be drawing next turn and see if line A or line B could beat those cards. Let's start off with all those board wipes, which both lines pretty much unequivocally lose to. Dragon's Fury is guaranteed to hit something of 6 or more. That kills us. A Meteor kills us, and the second Flame Strike kills us. Second Firelands Portal, well, that clears away our biggest thing, and we need every single minion on board to win this game, so that kills us. Raven's Familiar, that's going to hit any of the spells, which we just talked about, which all kills us, which Senfglas will be able to play, so we're dead if that happens. This just leaves us with the minions that remain in Senfglas' deck. Those are not going to be able to interact with our board in any way. away, which means they won't be able to interrupt our lethal setups. So if Senfglas hits a Medivh the Guardian, a Dragoncaller Alana, the second Arcane Tyrant, or the second Doomsayer, then we're in pretty good shape. Unfortunately, the Acolyte of Pain means she's going to be able to get at least one additional draw from an attack from it, and he also has his hero power to ping it, so he's going to be getting 2 additional draws. So when you put all that together, this means that the only way we're winning this game is if the top 3 cards of Senfglas's deck are all minions. It actually doesn't really matter when you break down all the different draws that we could be encountering, whether or not we choose the Ultimate Infestation line or the line that Allie chose. Both of them beat minion draws, both of them lose to spell draws, which is unfortunately a pretty anticlimactic answer to what I think is a really cool Hearthstone scenario here, where it's actually potentially correct to use Ultimate Infestation with 0 cards in your deck. So I am going to give my official what's the move stamp of approval to line B, the Ultimate Infestation line, because if you're presented with an opportunity where you are able to use Ultimate Infestation with 0 cards remaining in your deck, and it is equally optimal to an alternative line which does not use Ultimate Infestation with 0 cards in your deck, then I think it's fair to say that the Ultimate Infestation line sends a stronger message to your opponent that you're not messing around. So at the end of the day, even though this particular choice ended up being basically a moot point, both of them are equally effective in this particular game, I do think it does a good job of highlighting the sort of things that you want to be looking for when you're approaching those fatigue scenarios. What you want to do is eliminate as many variables as possible and just try to hone in on the unknowns, because when we get to fatigue scenarios, we actually do have enough time to just focus on the things that we don't know, since the things that we know are all right there on the board in front of us. In this particular situation, we are focusing on the unknowns out of Senfglas's deck, since we were the player in fatigue, but this could of course happen on the other side of the table. When you have cards remaining in your deck, you're trying to think of what your opponent has left in their deck, which we should be able to deduce since we're using those deck trackers, yeah? And walking through all the ways that the game could shake out with the options that are available to us. This is something that we just don't have the time to do in any sort of reasonable capacity when we're not in fatigue, because there's so many variables on both sides of the table. But when we get to this late stage of the game where you only have to worry about 5, 6, 7, 8 potential cards, something in that ballpark, it is feasible to try to walk through them once you understand what your game plan is. Either the game plan to go for face because you are the person that is being pressured for time, or to try to control for the board because your opponent is the person that's being pressured for time. Now, this isn't all to say that calculating exactly what we should be doing in fatigue scenarios is an easy feat. It's just to suggest that when we do get to this stage of the game, it is quite often possible to calculate definitively what the perfect move is in that spot, which is something you really can't say in the mid game or the early game because there's just too many variables to work through. That just about wraps things up. Thank you very much to @SN_Leon on Twitter for suggesting this play, and thank you to Senfglas for replying in the thread. Here's what he had to say about this play. Senfglas prefers the Ultimate Infestation line, pointing out that you get to develop the 5/5, and also pointing out correctly that the fatigue damage is not particularly relevant in this spot. However, he does identify that it didn't matter either way, since he did draw the Flame Strike, but that in a vacuum, it is probably smarter to develop your board a little bit more when the fatigue damage doesn't matter, just in case there's an opportunity that you can be pushing extra or additional attacks with that 5/5, which you wouldn't be getting if you had to wait to play that Ultimate Infestation a little longer. That'll do it for this week's episode. I will see you guys next week.